John Miller yawned as he stared at the monitor screens. Another boring Tuesday at the International Space Observatory in Nevada. The same beeping sounds, the same flashing lights, and the same empty signals from deep space. 5 years working. Here, and not once had they found anything interesting. Just random space noise and the occasional satellite signal. He sipped his cold coffee and checked his watch. 4 more hours until his shift ended. John ran his hand through his short brown hair and sighed. At 32, this wasn't where he had imagined his life would be. A mid-level technician in a government facility that most people didn't even know existed. The alarm blared suddenly, making John jump and spill coffee on his white uniform shirt. "What the?" he muttered, quickly setting down his mug and typing. Commands into his keyboard. The main screen flashed red. Something was entering Earth's atmosphere, and it wasn't following any known flight path of satellites or space junk. It wasn't burning up either. Whatever it was coming down controlled, and it was coming down fast. John grabbed the phone and called his supervisor. "Sir, we have an unidentified object entering atmosphere over Nevada. Trajectory suggests impact approximately 10 miles. Southwest of our location." 20 minutes later, John found himself in a jeep with 3 other staff members racing across the desert. As the most junior member of the emergency response team, he hadn't expected to be included. But Dr. Wyatt, the head scientist, had specifically requested him. "You've got the steadiest hands and the calmest head, Miller," she had said while grabbing. "Equipment. I need someone who won't panic." The impact site wasn't hard to find. A thin trail of blue smoke rose into the clear morning sky. As they approached, John's heart beat faster. This wasn't a meteorite or crashed satellite. The object sitting in a shallow crater was clearly artificial. A smooth, oval pod about the size of a small car. Its surface shimmered with an unusual, metallic sheen, seeming to absorb and reflect the sunlight at the same time. "Keep your distance," Dr. Wyatt ordered, pulling out radiation detection equipment. "And for God's sake, don't touch anything." Before anyone could respond, a seam appeared in the side of the pod. It widened silently, revealing a dark interior. The team froze. "Should we call for military backup?" asked Rick, one of the security officers. "They're already on their way." Dr. Wyatt replied, her voice tight. "ETA 15 minutes. John couldn't look away from the opening in the pod. Something was moving inside. A slender arm emerged, followed by a figure that carefully climbed out and stood beside the craft. John's. Breath caught in his throat. The being before them was roughly human in shape, but undeniably alien. It stood about 5.5 feet tall, with a slender build. Its skin was a soft blue color that seemed to shimmer slightly in the sunlight. Large, almond-shaped eyes dominated. A face that had no visible nose, just 2 small slits. Instead of hair, a series of delicate, fin-like structures crowned its head. The alien wore what appeared to be a form-fitting silver suit. Around one wrist was a device that glowed with a soft green light. For a long moment, nobody moved or spoke. Then the alien raised its hand in what looked like a greeting. Its fingers were long and thin, almost translucent. "Holy shit," whispered Rick. "That's a freaking alien." Dr. Wyatt stepped forward cautiously. "Hello," she said, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "We mean you no harm." The alien tilted its head, studying them. Then it raised its wrist and touched the glowing device. A soft humming filled the air. Scanning biological signatures. Came a mechanical voice from the device, seeking resonance compatibility. The green light swept over the small group of humans. When it passed over John, it changed to blue. "Compatibility found," announced the device. The alien's large eyes widened, and it looked directly at John. "You are the one I have been seeking," said the device, translating the alien's soft, musical sounds. John felt everyone's eyes turn to him. "Me?" he asked, pointing to himself. The alien nodded and stepped toward him. Dr. Wyatt moved to block its path. "Wait, we need to establish proper protocols. We can't just—" The alien gently sidestepped her and continued toward John. Up close, he could see that its eyes weren't just large. They were deep, with irises that swirled with different shades of purple. There was intelligence there, and something else, something that looked strangely like joy. "My name is Lyra," said the translation device. "I come from a world you would call Elysium. I am here as a seeker." "A seeker of what?" John asked, finding his voice at last. "That is complex to explain," replied Lyra, "but I can only explain to you. Our species communicates best with those who share resonance patterns. You are my resonance match on this world." Within an hour, the site was swarming with military personnel, scientists, and government officials. Helicopters circled overhead, and a temporary containment facility was being erected around the pod. Amidst the chaos, one thing became clear. Lyra would only communicate with John. The alien refused to speak with anyone else, maintaining that only John had the correct resonance for proper understanding. This led to heated arguments among the officials, with some suggesting that John might be compromised or that the alien was using some form of mind control. "This is absurd," said a stern-faced man in a dark suit who had introduced himself only as Director Garner. "We can't base our first contact protocols on the whims of an extraterrestrial. We need to take the alien to a secure facility for proper study." "Her name is Lyra," John found himself saying, surprising everyone, including himself. "And she seems peaceful. Shouldn't we try to understand why she's here before locking her up?" Director Garner glared at him. "Your job, Mr. Miller, is to follow orders, not make policy decisions about alien encounters." Dr. Wyatt, who had been running tests on air samples near the pod, intervened. "Actually, Director, if the alien Lyra will only communicate with Mr. Miller, then we need him. Unless you'd prefer no information at all?" After hours of debate, a compromise was reached. John would serve as the official human liaison to Lyra. He would house her, help her understand Earth, and facilitate her mission, whatever that was. In return, she would share information about her world and technology. The arrangement would be closely monitored, of course, with daily debriefings and constant surveillance. As John signed the mountain of confidentiality agreements and liability waivers, he couldn't help but notice how happy Lyra seemed. While everyone around her was tense, suspicious, and afraid, the alien appeared almost cheerful, her large eyes taking in everything with what looked like delight. "Are you not worried about being stranded here?" John asked her as they were finally cleared to leave the site. Lyra touched her translation device. "I am not stranded. I am exactly where I need to be." A sound like tinkling bells emerged from her laughter, John realized. "But why me?" he asked, still confused by the whole situation. Lyra's eyes seemed to smile. "Because you were open to finding something in the emptiness," she replied cryptically. "Just as I am." As they drove away from the site in a government SUV, with two more vehicles following closely behind, John had the strangest feeling that his life had just been divided into two parts: everything before today and everything that would come after. And for some reason he couldn't explain, he wasn't afraid. John pulled into his driveway, still not quite believing that he was bringing an alien home. The government SUV that had been following them parked across the street. 2 agents would be watching his house day and night. John had been told this was for security purposes, but he suspected it was more about keeping an eye on Lyra than protecting them. "This is where you live?" Lyra asked, her translation device converting her musical sounds into English. "Yes. It's not much. But it's home, John replied, looking at his small one-story house with new eyes. The blue paint was peeling in places, and the front yard needed mowing. It was a far cry from the sleek, high-tech environment of the Space Observatory. It contains you, Lyra said. That makes it interesting. John smiled despite his nervousness. There was something refreshing about Lyra's perspective. As they walked to the front door, John spotted his elderly neighbor, Betty Rogers, watering her flowers. Her eyes widened at the sight of Lyra, and she dropped her watering can. "Good afternoon, Betty," John called, trying to sound normal. "Nice day, isn't it?" Betty just stared, her mouth hanging open. John quickly ushered Lyra inside before his neighbor could faint or call the police. Once inside, John's cat Pepper darted out from under the couch, took one look at Lyra, and arched his back with a loud hiss. "That's Pepper," John explained. "He's not dangerous, just surprised." Lyra knelt down slowly and extended her hand toward the cat. Her slender blue fingers remained perfectly still as Pepper cautiously approached to sniff her. To John's amazement, the cat's fur settled, and within moments, Pepper was rubbing against Lyra's legs. "Your companion creature is accepting me into Vu. His territory," Lyra observed. "This is good." "He's never warmed up to anyone that quickly," John said, surprised. "It took him weeks to stop hiding from my last girlfriend." "Animals sense resonance patterns, too," Lyra explained. "They are often more sensitive than humans." John showed Lyra around the house. She was fascinated by the most ordinary things: the refrigerator, the television, even the bathroom sink. When he turned on the tap, she watched the water flow with an expression of wonder. "Your planet has so much water that you let it run freely," she marveled. "On Elysium, water is precious. We recycle every drop." The spare bedroom would be Lyra's. John apologized for its plainness. "Just a bed, a dresser, and a small desk. It is perfect," Lyra assured him. "I require little for comfort." That evening, John ordered pizza for dinner, realizing too late that he had no idea what Lyra could eat. The government scientists had run tests and concluded that most Earth food wouldn't poison her, but they couldn't be sure what she would like. When the pizza arrived, Lyra examined it curiously. She picked up a slice, studied it from all angles, then took a small bite. Her large eyes widened, and she made a sound that her translator didn't convert. "Is it bad?" John asked worriedly. "It is ... Lyra paused, seemingly searching for the right word. "Incredible. So many flavors and textures at once. On my world, nutrition is efficient, but bland. This is..." She took another bite. "Joyful food," John laughed. "It's just cheap pizza. Wait until you try ice cream." Over the next few days, they established a routine. Each morning, government scientists would arrive to run tests and ask Lyra questions, which she would answer only through John. In the afternoons, John would help Lyra learn about Earth, showing her books, internet videos, and television programs. What struck John most was Lyra's persistent happiness. Despite being on an alien world, surrounded by strange beings and customs, she maintained a sense of wonder and joy that was almost childlike. Each morning, she would stand in his backyard, face tilted toward the sun, humming a melodious tune. One morning, John found her like this, standing barefoot on the grass with her eyes closed. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Feeling your world," she replied without opening her eyes. "It vibrates with life. So many different kinds of energy, all connected and flowing. Don't you miss your own?" John asked. "Your own people?" Lyra opened her eyes and looked at him. "I am a seeker. We are chosen because we can adapt to separation. But don't you ever feel sad or lonely?" Lyra seemed to consider this. "Those concepts exist on my world, but in different forms." we experience them as ... efficiency reductions. Here, I feel them as something richer. She placed a hand over her chest. Here, I feel everything more strongly. It is why I'm happy. Before John could ask more questions, his phone rang. It was Director Garner from the government team. Miller, we need you and the alien at the facility immediately. Something's happened. At the facility, they were led to a conference room where several officials waited, including Dr. Wyatt and Director Garner. On a screen on the wall was an image of space with a blinking dot highlighted. We've detected a signal, Director Garner said without preamble. It's coming from the direction your pod came from, Lyra. Is your species sending more visitors? All eyes turned to Lyra. For the first time since her arrival, she looked uncomfortable. That is not my people, she said after a moment. A signal. Pattern is different. Different how? Dr. Wyatt pressed. It is ... Lyra hesitated. It is older technology, from before my time. Director Garner slammed his hand on the table. You're lying. Our analysts say this signal is responding directly to emissions from your pod. I am not lying, Lyra insisted. I came alone, as all seekers do. Then explain the signal, Garner demanded. Lyra looked at John, her large eyes troubled. I cannot. Not fully. Not yet. The tension in the room was thick. John could see that the officials were becoming suspicious, viewing Lyra as a potential threat rather than a visitor. Look, John said, stepping forward. Lyra has been nothing but peaceful since she arrived. Whatever this signal is, maybe we should give her time to explain when she's ready. This isn't a social visit, Miller, Garner snapped. This is a matter of planetary security. Dr. Wyatt, who had been studying data on her tablet, looked up. The signal is weak and degrading. Whatever it is, it's not an immediate threat. I suggest we continue monitoring it, but proceed as planned with our cultural exchange. After heated debate, the officials reluctantly agreed to continue as before, but with increased surveillance. As John and Lyra drove back to his house, he noticed she was unusually quiet. You know what that signal is, don't you? He asked gently. Lyra turned her large eyes to him. Yes, she admitted. But understanding it requires context you do not yet have. About my world. About why I am really here. I thought you were here. As a seeker, John said, confused. I am, Lyra replied. But what I seek is more complex than your people realize, and more important to both our worlds than anyone knows. That night, as John lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he heard soft music, coming from Lyra's room. It was hauntingly beautiful, but tinged with something that sounded like sadness. For the first time, he wondered if Lyra's happiness was as simple as it seemed, or if it was hiding something much deeper and more complicated. Outside his window, the government agents continued their watch, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, an unknown signal blinked, carrying a message John couldn't begin to understand. A month passed, and life with an alien housemate became almost normal for John. The government team still visited daily, but their visits grew shorter as Lyra continued to show no signs of being a threat. The mysterious signal had disappeared. After 3 days, which eased some tensions but left many questions unanswered, John and Lyra settled into a comfortable routine. In the mornings, they would sit on the back porch drinking coffee, John's regular brew and a special mild version for Lyra, who loved the taste but found the full caffeine too stimulating for her system. I want to show you more of Earth, John said one morning. Not just my house and the research facility, real places where people live and work. Lyra's eyes brightened. I would like that very much. After getting special permission from Director Garner, who insisted on a security detail following them, John took Lyra to town. They had disguised her alien features as best they could, a wig to cover her fin-like structures, makeup to tone down her blue skin, and large sunglasses to hide her unusual eyes. To casual observers, she might pass for a human with an unusual fashion sense. Their first stop was Rosie's Diner, a small local restaurant where John often ate breakfast before Lyra arrived. As they entered, the usual morning chatter dimmed as people noticed Lyra. John felt his heart racing, worried about how people would react. Mary, the waitress who had served John for years, approached their table with coffee pot in hand. She looked at Lyra with wide eyes. "So you're the one keeping John from his usual breakfasts," she said after a moment, her voice friendly despite her obvious surprise at Lyra's appearance. "What'll you have, honey?" "Our pancakes are the best in the county." John relaxed a little. Mary didn't know Lyra was an alien. The government had created a cover story about her being part of a classified research project, but her casual acceptance made things feel almost normal. "I would like to try these pancakes," Lyra said. Through her translator, which had been disguised as a Bluetooth earpiece. As they ate, John watched Lyra experience her first diner breakfast. Her joy at tasting maple syrup made him smile. It was these small moments, watching her discover new things, that had become the best part of his days. After breakfast, they walked through the town park where a Little League baseball game was underway. Parents cheered from the bleachers as children ran bases and chased after balls. Lyra stood watching, unusually still. "Are you okay?" John asked, noticing a strange shimmer in her eyes. "These small humans," Lyra said softly. "They play, they fail, they try again. And those larger ones encourage them regardless of success." "That's what parents do," John explained. "They support their kids no matter what." "On my world, young ones are not raised this way," Lyra said. "They are grown in special facilities, taught by machines from birth. Efficiency is valued above all. The concept of play exists only as structured learning." "That sounds ... double quotes." John hesitated, not wanting to offend her. "Empty," Lyra finished for him. "It is why seekers exist. We search for what has been lost." Later that afternoon, they visited a small music festival in the town square. Local bands played on a makeshift stage, while people danced and sang along. Lyra stood transfixed by a young woman singing a soulful ballad, her voice raw with emotion. "This music contains pain," Lyra observed, "yet people are enjoying it. How can sadness bring pleasure?" "It's not about enjoying the sadness," John tried to explain. "It's about connecting with it, knowing you're not alone in feeling that way." Lyra nodded slowly. "Connection through shared emotional states. This is what we have lost." On their way home, they stopped at a grocery store. John noticed Lyra was attracting attention despite her disguise. He hurried her through the aisles, grabbing a few essentials. In the checkout line, a young boy of about 7 stared openly at Lyra. "Why are you blue?" he asked loudly. His mother looked mortified. "Kevin, that's not polite." Before John could intervene, Lyra knelt down to the boy's level. "I am blue because that is how I was made," she said simply. "Why are your eyes green?" The boy thought for a moment. "Because I was born that way." "Exactly," Lyra said with a smile. "We are all made differently." The boy nodded, accepting this answer with the easy wisdom of children. His mother gave them an apologetic smile as they left. Back at home, John found Director Garner waiting on his porch. His face was grim. "We need to talk," he said, not waiting for a greeting. "In private." John asked Lyra to wait inside while he spoke with Garner in the yard. "We've intercepted communications," Garner said in a low voice. "Not from space this time. From right here on Earth. Someone's been monitoring your alien friend, and it's not us." "What do you mean?" John asked, alarmed. "Foreign intelligence, private corporations, We don't know yet. But someone else is very interested in Lyra, and they may not have Earth's best interests at heart. John looked back at his house, where Lyra was visible through the window, gently petting Pepper. What does this mean for us? It means we're moving you both to a secure location tomorrow. Pack only essentials. Tell no one. Garner handed him a small device, emergency beacon. Use it if anything happens before morning. After Garner left, John went inside, his mind racing. Lyra sensed his tension immediately. Something is wrong, she stated, not a question. John explained the situation as Garner had described it. To his surprise, Lyra didn't seem shocked. I suspected this might happen, she said quietly. You did? Why didn't you say anything? Lyra's large eyes held his gaze. Because I needed to be sure of you first, John Miller. Now I believe I am. Sure of what? John asked, confused. That you can handle the truth. Lyra moved to the center of the living room and removed a small object from her pocket. It looked like a smooth stone, but when she pressed it, it glowed with an inner light. My people did not send me here just to learn about human emotions, she said. I came because we detected something dangerous on your planet, something that threatens both our worlds. What kind of threat? John's mouth felt dry. A technology from my world that was stolen long ago. We believed it lost, but recently detected its energy signature on Earth. She looked at him solemnly. It has the power to strip sentient beings of their emotional capacity, rendering them docile and compliant. On my world, it was used as a weapon in our last great war, thousands of your years ago. And someone on Earth has this weapon? John felt a chill run down his spine. Not the weapon itself, but its blueprints. The signal we detected was an activation attempt. Lyra's voice grew urgent. I was sent to find it before it could be fully constructed. That is my true mission. Why didn't you tell our government this? John demanded. Because I do not know who on your planet possesses this technology. It could be anyone, even someone. In your government, Lyra's eyes shimmered with intensity. That is why I needed a human I could trust. Someone whose mind I could read through our resonance connection. You can read my mind? John stepped back in shock. Not thoughts, emotional patterns. Truth from deception. Lyra approached him slowly. I am sorry for not telling you sooner, but now we must act quickly. The people watching us may be the ones who have the stolen technology. John sank onto the couch, trying to process everything. So all this time, your happiness was real, Lyra assured him. Finding joy in your world was unexpected, but genuine. My people have sacrificed emotion for security for so long that we forgot what we lost. Being here has reminded me. That is why I cannot allow this technology to rob humans of what makes them special. As night fell, John packed a small bag as instructed, but he couldn't shake the feeling that by morning, everything would change again. Outside the government, agents watched the house, unaware that somewhere in the darkness, other eyes were watching too. John woke to the sound of breaking glass. He bolted upright in bed, heart pounding. The digital clock beside his bed showed 3:17 a.m. For a moment, he thought he might have dreamed the noise, but then he heard muffled voices coming from the living room. Grabbing the emergency beacon Garner had given him, John pressed the button and crept toward his bedroom door. He eased it open just enough to peek through. What he saw made his blood run cold. 3 figures dressed in black moved silently through his living room. They wore masks and carried what looked like tranquilizer guns. One of them was heading toward Lyra's room. Without thinking, John burst through his door. Lyra, run! He shouted. The intruders spun toward him. One fired, and John felt a sharp sting in his shoulder. Almost immediately, his legs felt heavy, and the room began to spin. As he collapsed to the floor, he saw Lyra's door fly open. Her eyes glowed in the darkness, brighter than he had ever seen them. "John!" she cried out, her translator making the words sound strangely flat compared to the emotion in her voice. One of the intruders fired at her, but something incredible happened. Lyra moved with shocking speed, dodging the dart with an almost liquid grace. The glowing stone she had shown John earlier was in her hand, pulsing with light. The last thing John saw before losing consciousness was Lyra touching the stone to the chest of one of the intruders, who dropped to the ground as if his strings had been cut. John woke up in a moving vehicle. His head throbbed, and his mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton. As his vision cleared, he realized he was in the back of a van. Lyra sat beside him, her large eyes watching him with concern. "You are awake," she said, relief evident in her voice. "I was worried the human sedative might harm you." "What happened?" John croaked, his throat dry. "Where are we?" "We are with friends," Lyra said. Looking around, John saw Dr. Wyatt in the driver's seat and a man he didn't recognize, riding shotgun. "Agent Clark," the man introduced himself, turning to face John. "I work with Director Garner. We got your distress signal, but by the time we arrived, you were both gone." Fortunately, Dr. Wyatt had placed a tracking device in Lyra's translator. "We followed the signal and found you being loaded into a different vehicle." "The intruders?" John asked. "Two escaped. We have one in custody, but he's not talking." Agent Clark's face was grim. "We believe they work for Monarch Industries." "The tech company?" John was confused. Monarch was one of the largest technology corporations in the world, known for their advancements in artificial intelligence and medical equipment. "Yes," Dr. Wyatt said from the driver's seat. "And coincidentally, they've been making remarkable breakthroughs in neural interface technology recently. Too remarkable, according to some of our scientists." John looked at Lyra. "The stolen technology?" She nodded. "The energy signature I was sent to find is coming from their main research facility. I believe they have been attempting to reverse engineer technology from my world without understanding its true purpose or danger." "Which is?" Agent Clark asked. "In its original form, it was designed as a weapon to remove emotional capacity from enemy populations," Lyra explained, "to make them easier to control. My people used it in our last great war, with devastating consequences. Both sides deployed the technology, and entire cities became populated by shells of beings, physically alive but emotionally dead. Why would Monarch want something like that?" John wondered aloud. "They may not understand what they have," Dr. Wyatt suggested. "If they think it's just an advanced neural interface, they might see applications for medicine, entertainment, or military use without realizing its true effects. Or they know exactly what it is." Agent Clark said darkly, "Mind control technology would be worth billions to the right buyers." The van turned onto a dirt road, bouncing over ruts and potholes. After several minutes, they pulled up to what looked like an abandoned warehouse in the middle of nowhere. "Safe house," Agent Clark explained as they got out. "Off the grid. Only Director Garner and I know about this location." Inside, the warehouse had been converted into a simple living space with a few cots, a small kitchen, and what looked like a makeshift laboratory. Director Garner was waiting for them, along with two armed agents. "Miller," Garner nodded at John. "Glad you made it. We have a situation." Over the next hour, Garner explained what they had learned. Monarch Industries had somehow acquired fragments of alien technology years ago, not from Lyra's people, but from another crash site that had been kept secret from the public. They had been working to understand and replicate the technology, but had hit a wall until recently. "We believe they detected Lyra's arrival and realized she might be the key to completing their work, Garner said. Our prisoner confirmed they were instructed to capture both of you alive. What's the plan now? John asked. We need to destroy their prototype before they can perfect it, Lyra said firmly. If this technology is deployed on your world, the consequences would be unimaginable. We can't just storm one of the most secure corporate facilities in the country, Garner objected. We need evidence, warrants, proper channels. There isn't time, Lyra insisted. My sensors indicate they are very close to activation. Once the core is stabilized, it will be too late. Dr. Wyatt, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. I might have a way in. I was invited to tour their research facility next week, part of a government oversight committee. I could bring John as my assistant. And how does Lyra get in? John asked. She's kind of noticeable. Lyra removed her small glowing stone again. This contains technology that can mask my appearance more effectively than your disguises. For short periods, I can appear fully human. This is insane, Garner muttered, but John could see he was considering it. If you're caught, the diplomatic incident would be catastrophic, not to mention the personal danger. If we do nothing, the danger is far worse, Lyra said quietly. I have seen what this technology does. It doesn't just suppress emotion. It destroys the very essence of what makes a being sentient. It is a violation of the deepest kind. We'll need a solid plan, Agent Clark said, pulling out a laptop. And we have 4 days to create one. As the others gathered around to begin planning, John pulled Lyra aside. That thing you did back at the house, he said in a low voice. How you moved so fast. I've never seen anything like it. Lyra's eyes shimmered. My people appear fragile, but we are not. In times of danger, we can channel our energy differently. Is there anything else I should know before we attempt to break into one of the most secure buildings in the country? John asked, trying to keep his voice light despite his fear. Lyra placed her hand on his arm, her touch surprisingly warm. Yes, if we succeed, I will have completed my mission. My people will expect me to return. John felt something twist in his chest. In all the chaos, he hadn't considered that Lyra would eventually leave Earth, leave him. The thought bothered him more than he wanted to admit. And will you? Return, I mean, he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Lyra looked at him, her large eyes searching his face. That depends on what we find at Monarch. And on other factors, I am still ... processing. Before John could ask what she meant, Garner called them back to the group. The planning had begun. In 4 days, they would either save humanity's emotional future or fail trying. And either way, John realized his time with Lyra might be coming to an end. The day of the mission arrived too quickly. John straightened his tie and checked his fake ID badge one more time. According to his new identity, he was Dr. William Carter, research assistant to Dr. Wyatt. They were scheduled for a tour of Monarch, industry's main research facility, in just 2 hours. Are you ready? Dr. Wyatt asked, entering the small room John had been using at the safe house. As ready as I'll ever be to break into a high-security facility and destroy alien technology. John replied with a nervous smile. Remember, stick to the plan, Director Garner said, joining them. You and Dr. Wyatt keep their security team busy with questions, while Lyra slips away to locate the prototype. Where is Lyra? John asked, realizing he hadn't seen her that morning. Preparing, Agent Clark said from the doorway. She said the transformation process requires concentration. Just then, a woman John didn't recognize walked into the room. She had shoulder-length brown hair, hazel eyes, and wore a professional-looking pantsuit. It took John several seconds to realize he was looking at Lyra. How ... He began, unable to find words. The stone contains a temporary biological restructuring field, Lyra explained, her voice coming from the unfamiliar human face. Even her translator sounded different, perfectly matching her new appearance. It will last approximately 4 hours. Before I must revert to my natural form. You look. John was still struggling for words. Human, Dr. Wyatt finished for him, clearly impressed. Remarkable technology. We should go, Lyra said. According to your identification, I am Susan Lee, a visiting scientist from the National Science Foundation. The drive to Monarch Industries took 45 minutes. The building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel with the company's logo. A stylized butterfly, displayed prominently on the facade. Security was tight, with guards checking IDs and running bags through scanners. Dr. Wyatt led the way, confidently presenting her real government credentials, along with the fake IDs for John and Lyra. After a tense moment, they were cleared and given visitor badges. Dr. Wyatt, welcome to Monarch Industries, greeted a tall man in an expensive suit. I'm Peter Harris, Chief Research Officer. We're delighted to have government interest in our neural interface project. As they followed Harris deeper into the building, John tried to appear calm while memorizing the layout. According to their plan, once they reached the main research floor, Lyra would slip away during a distraction Dr. Wyatt would create. The research floor was impressive, a vast, open space filled with scientists working at advanced-looking equipment. In the center was a sealed glass chamber containing what looked like a metal sphere about the size of a basketball. That's it, Lyra whispered to John. The core of the emotion suppression device. Harris led them toward a conference room for an initial presentation. As they walked, Dr. Wyatt deliberately dropped her tablet, scattering papers across the floor. Oh, I'm so sorry, she said, kneeling to gather them. John and Harris both moved to help, creating the momentary confusion they needed. When John looked up, Lyra had disappeared. For the next 30 minutes, John and Dr. Wyatt asked detailed questions about Monarch's research, keeping Harris and his team engaged. John was constantly aware of the time passing, knowing that Lyra had only a few hours before her human disguise would fail. And this neural interface, how exactly does it connect to the human brain? Dr. Wyatt asked, prompting a long technical explanation from Harris. John's earpiece crackled to life. I've found the control room, came Lyra's quiet voice. But there's a problem. The device is already activated. They're running the first human trial today. John felt his blood run cold. This wasn't part of the plan. He caught Dr. Wyatt's eye and gave a slight nod toward the door, their signal that something was wrong. Mr. Harris, would it be possible to see the actual interface device? Dr. Wyatt asked, improvising. It would help me understand the technology better. Harris seemed pleased by the request. Of course. We're actually preparing for a demonstration in the main lab. You're welcome to observe. He led them back to the main research floor, where scientists were gathered around the glass chamber. Inside, the metal sphere was now glowing with a faint blue light. Next to it was a chair with restraints, clearly meant for a human subject. Where is Lyra? John whispered to Dr. Wyatt as they walked. I don't know, she replied under her breath. But we need to stop that demonstration. As they approached the chamber, John spotted Lyra in her human disguise on the other side of the lab. She caught his eye and pointed discreetly to a control panel near the chamber. The first human trial of our emotional regulation interface will begin in 5 minutes, Harris announced proudly. Our volunteer is a patient with severe PTSD. The interface will allow us to temporarily suppress the emotional response to traumatic memories. Temporarily? Dr. Wyatt asked. How do you ensure the effects don't become permanent? While Harris explained their supposed safeguards, John saw Lyra moving slowly toward the control panel. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout. The facility, security breach in Section C, came an announcement over the speakers. All personnel implement lockdown procedures. In the confusion, Lyra made her move. She reached the control panel and placed her glowing stone against it. Sparks flew as the system short-circuited. "Stop her!" Harris shouted, finally noticing. What was happening? Security guards rushed toward Lyra. John didn't think, he just acted. He ran to Lyra's side, putting himself between her and the guards. "We can't let them use this technology," he shouted to Dr. Wyatt. "It will destroy what makes us human." Dr. Wyatt, to her credit, pulled out her government ID. "This facility is now under federal investigation," she announced in a commanding voice. Everyone stepped back from that device immediately, but Harris wasn't backing down. "This technology will revolutionize mental health treatment," he insisted. "We're not doing anything wrong." "You don't understand what you've created," Lyra said, her human disguise beginning to flicker as her 4 hours neared their end. "This isn't just a neural interface. It's a weapon designed to strip sentience from living beings." As if to prove her point, the glowing sphere began to pulse more intensely. The lights in the facility flickered, and several scientists closest to the chamber suddenly dropped to their knees, their faces going blank. "It's destabilizing," Lyra said urgently. "I need to get closer to shut it down completely." "You'll never make it through the glass," John said, looking at the thick chamber walls. Lyra's human appearance flickered again, showing glimpses of her true blue form beneath. "I have to try." Before John could stop her, Lyra pressed her hand against the chamber door. The security lock sparked and the door swung open. She rushed inside, directly toward the pulsing sphere. "No," John shouted, trying to follow, but the door sealed shut behind her. Inside the chamber, Lyra stood before the sphere, her human disguise now completely gone. Her true form seemed to glow with the same blue light as the device. She placed her hands on the sphere and closed her large eyes in concentration. The sphere's pulsing became erratic, then faster, then suddenly stopped. A blinding flash of light filled the chamber, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When John could see again, both the sphere and Lyra were gone. In the days that followed, Monarch Industries was placed under federal investigation. Their research was confiscated, and several executives were arrested for illegal experimentation. The official story released to the public was that they had been developing dangerous mind control technology under the guise of medical research. Returned to his home, which felt emptier than ever without Lyra, Pepper the cat often sat at the window, as if waiting for her return. John did the same some nights, staring up at the stars and wondering if she had survived or somehow returned to her world. 1 month after the incident, John woke to a strange humming sound coming from his backyard. It was the same melodious tune Lyra used to hum while facing the morning sun. Heart racing, he ran outside. In the center of his yard stood a familiar figure with blue skin and large, expressive eyes. "Lyra?" John could barely believe what he was seeing. "I thought you were double quotes, destroyed with the device?" She smiled. "No, my people have safeguards against our own technology. The stone protected me and allowed me to return home." "Your mission is complete then," John said, trying to hide his sadness. "I guess you'll be going back for good now." Lyra stepped closer to him. "That was my intention. I reported everything to my people about the technology, about Earth, about humans." She paused. "And about you." "What did they say?" John asked. "They have decided to establish formal contact with Earth in the future. But more importantly, they have authorized a new type of seeker, one who stays on the world they find to learn more deeply." John felt hope rising in his chest. "And are you ... "I requested to be the first," Lyra said, her eyes shining with that now familiar happiness. "If you are willing to continue hosting me." John couldn't help but smile. "I think Pepper would be very disappointed if you didn't come back." "Only Pepper?" Lyra asked, a hint of teasing in her voice. "No," John admitted. "I missed you too. More than I thought possible." As they walked back to the house together, John finally understood why Lyra had been so happy when she first arrived on Earth. It wasn't just about discovering a new world or completing a mission.